So welcome to all of you this evening. The program this evening is being brought to you by the Holistic Health Community in collaboration with the Morty and Gloria Wolosoff Foundation. And for those of you who are new to the Holistic Health Community, we were founded in 2012 as a nonprofit corporation dedicated to vibrant health from soil to soul. We provide holistic healthcare sessions at our monthly healthcare days and virtual healthcare weeks, offering an amazing variety of modalities as well as holistic classes and special events such as this evening. We operate according to the economics of generosity. Clients are invited to offer either a donation to the organization or to pay it forward through volunteer work or an act of kindness to someone in need. In 2021, we began a new outreach program, partnering with People's Place, Seasoned Gives, and the YWCA in Kingston to bring our services to the underserved communities nearby. And our future vision is in the process of manifestation. We envision a holistic campus providing land for regenerative farming and farming programs, as well as buildings to house our holistic programs, designed according to the principles of sacred geometry, harmonic resonance, and natural building, demonstrating what's possible in the interaction of architectural structure with consciousness and healing. So imagine walking into a building and just being in that building being a healing in itself. Our program tonight is offered by our wonderful and highly skilled architect who's helping us reach these extraordinary design goals. Janus Welton is a licensed architect and owner of Eco Architecture Design Works, focused on integrating sustainability, energy, health, and nature's genius in her Hudson Valley practice. She maintains a deep commitment to sacred geometry, classical feng shui, and biomimicry principles in her design work. Before settling in New York, she practiced architecture in Los Angeles, where she studied and was certified by classical feng shui master Larry Sang, founder of the American Feng Shui Institute. And she assisted the AFS Institute teaching housing developers these principles, so popular with their Pacific Rim clients. After moving to New York in 2000, she contributed to the New York School of Feng Shui and the New York City Hollis Institute, broadening their feng shui programs with instruction in eco-design and healthy building practices. Tonight, we're going to have a question and answer period at the very end, approximately the last 10 to 15 minutes. And before we do that, we'll have about a 3-minute pause during which you can write your questions in the chat screen. So without any further ado, it's my honor and great privilege to introduce our wonderful architect and speaker tonight, Janice Welton.
Well, thank you, Cornelia. That was lovely. I just want to check in with everybody before we start. Can you see everything on the slide, or are there faces that cover up the slide? Because we can help you get rid of that. If there are faces that cover up the slide, if you go to the upper right-hand corner, you'll see four rectangles. And if you click on the left-hand single rectangle, that will hide the thumbnail videos. And that way you can see all the information on the slide. So I'll give you all a chance to do that and let us know if you have any problem with that, and then we'll get started. Okay, we all set? So I want to welcome you all. This is a very, very auspicious time to be talking about this subject. Every first new moon in February marks the Chinese New Year. So yesterday was the full moon, then the Chinese New Year is upon us. That makes this the most auspicious time to think about cleansing our spaces, our homes, our workspaces, and ushering in the fresh new energy of the new year. And now's the time to make any physical changes in our environment. So today we'll embark on a big picture journey of how we can heal spaces with feng shui. So I already had a lovely introduction. I don't need to go further with this. We'll get right into the information. Just want to make sure that we're on the right slide here. So how can we transform a space into a healing one using classical feng shui? Well, this is an amazing system that offers subtle design techniques to create these surroundings that uplift the mood, boost the energy, and increase our health and prosperity. It's been hailed as the environmental science of the 21st century and is firmly grounded in nature's patterns and the universal cycles of change. So the Chinese words feng and shui translate to mean wind and water, respectively. And this concept derives from an ancient poem about human life being connected and flowing with the environment around it. The wind element, sometimes called air, drives the movement in all forms. It represents the spirit and the vital breath of qi of the universe, whereas the flowing water symbolizes income and abundance. This could be a river, lake, or pond. The original designation for this discipline was called Kan Yu, which translates as heaven and earth, which also means as above and so below. And many of you will recognize that from many other indigenous cosmologies. So I view classical feng shui as an ancient system of designing with nature. By understanding the relationship of nature's form and energy flows, not only are we able to understand the energetics of a particular place, but we can learn how to design a living environment that's in harmony with the pre-existing energy pattern of that place. Classical feng shui is a very ancient system, and it's particularly applicable to our North American and Catskill Mountain ecosystems due to similar climate and landforms. It presents the key to unlocking and understanding the relationship between the humans, nature, and the environment. So classical feng shui, as I said, is the earliest form of ecological design. It's been used for many centuries in Chinese history and site planning, building of cities, design of buildings, and even the layout of grave sites. It's not a religion, and it's not a passing fad. The Tao reflects the natural way and the eternal rhythms of the ever-changing universe and humanity. So it's best thought of as a philosophy, not a religion. The classical tradition dates back over 4,000 years, and it's derived from simple observation. These observers were Taoist Chinese sages who studied the natural cycles and patterns of the universe, layered them on a calendar. So the sun's cycles, the universal star and constellation patterns of the universe influenced the development of classical feng shui. And of course, there are other schools of feng shui that you may be familiar with. Some are related to Tibetan Buddhism, and some are more modern intuitive systems. But this evening, I'll be focusing on the ancient Taoist metaphysics of China, known as classical feng shui. So the underlying principle of feng shui is that life is alive, that it's made up of qi or qi. It's the universal invisible forces within us and around us that governs life. This energy can neither be destroyed nor created. The fundamental principle is that all things are a product of two forces that are the balanced aspects of the whole. Of course, that's the yin and the yang that you're all familiar with. The balance of these polarities are represented by the Tai Chi symbol that you see here. So the yin represents the female energy, the moon, the earth, nighttime, all the things you see on the gray side of the Tai Chi symbol. Whereas yang represents the sky, the sun, daylight, activity, motion. It's both of these polarities that need to be balanced in order to introduce wellness into a life positive home or office. So what you see here under the theory of feng shui are the 8 trigrams around the yin yang symbol. This is called the Bagua. The Bagua originated in China, and it consists of these 8 symbols used in Taoist cosmology. And these symbols are called trigrams. They represent the fundamental principles of reality and natural energy flows or forces. Each consists of 3 lines, either broken or unbroken. The broken ones represent yin, female energy. The unbroken ones represent yang, or male energy. Now, due to their tripartite structure, they are often referred to as the 8 trigrams. They're heaven, earth, water, fire, wind, thunder, mountain, and lake. And they all are arranged according to the compass directions. When they're seen like this in 8, in conjunction with the yin yang and the Tai Chi symbol, in an 8 formation, this is referred to as the Bagua. Now, the whole goal of what we're trying to do with feng shui in order to enhance health and well-being in spaces is to harness the vital life force energy. So we look at the wind, which is symbolizes the flow of energy, and water, which symbolizes containing the energy. And this creates a healthier environment by attracting and containing the positive energy flows while minimizing the negative energy flows. We can look at feng shui on many, many, many scales. This cosmic trinity discusses heaven, human, and earth. And here are 3 scales of application we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. On the heaven level, we're going to talk about the compass school, which deals with direction, cyclical movement of energy, and universal energy patterns over time. We're also going to touch on the human aspects of feng shui. That's our personal destiny, our astrology, beneficial directions, elements, and colors that are for us personally. And then we look at the earth. We look at the landform school. And here we're discussing the living forces and the environmental flow in the environment. So there's a lot of human nature connections that we're going to make with feng shui. We've talked a little bit about the history and philosophy. We're going to look at location and environment. And it all boils down to energy and magnetism. And that gives us various auspicious spatial arrangements, form, shapes, color, and we're going to talk about timing and cycles. So unlike the other types of feng shui, classical feng shui incorporates 4 factors: the environment, the natural features, mountains and waters, as well as the same principles used to analyze the artificial features like roads, highways, and buildings in an urban environment. And then we also consider the building, the facing direction of the building, the shape of the building, the internal layout, and the main door location predominantly. And we marry this with the people. The occupants have their own individual life guas. Each occupant is affected differently, and different outcomes are available for different people. And the most incredible concept is the concept of time, because Qi energy is forever changing and transforming. It goes in upturns and downturns. There's different energy qualities at different points in time. So first, I'll introduce the form school. This is the oldest school of Feng Shui. It's been used for over 6,000 years. Now, a good practitioner will always use the form school in conjunction with other methods, including the compass school, etc. Form school Feng Shui follows the natural principles and works with the Qi energy of land and water. The knowledge of the form school is based on the concept form defines energy. Form school examines shapes, symbolism in the environment, how these can be applied to property, location, offices, and homes. And it's very easy to see. It's very down to earth core concepts. And it is the core design concept behind the building of the magnificent Chinese imperial palaces, temples, cities, residential villages, and exquisite gardens throughout China's long history. So health and well-being starts with a healthy ecosystem and a healthy building site. Our native Catskill Mountains and our watershed offer a great opportunity to attract natural abundance and energy of mountain forms, wind patterns, and water flows to enhance our health and wellness. And by understanding the relationship of these nature forms and energy flows, not only are we able to understand a place, but we learn how to design a living environment that's in harmony with that place. And it's all part of our current popular sustainable eco-design emphasis in design. It gives us a view into nature's deep patterns and forms and dynamic energies. So we need to look at our landscape with new eyes, fresh eyes. Look at it as a pattern language of water and mountains. It's important in site selection and site planning for projects of all sizes. And the concentration on landform school enhances the design of healthy communities and homes to ensure harmony with nature. So to really feel and understand the pattern language of water and mountain forms, you need to immerse yourself in nature and feel those energies. I know I really didn't begin to understand water patterns until I became a whitewater rafting guide years ago when I was in architecture school. And it made me really, really embody and understand and see how the energy of the water moves in the landscape. And then similarly on the right, the dragons represent the mountain forms. So we'll go into that a little bit deeper. In any environmental analysis, particularly of our Catskill Mountains, we want to look at the mountain dragon veins. And they have their own pattern language. The location and relationship of mountain and water forms reveal the deeper meanings. The dragon veins are actually pathways of concentrated energy that work through the mountains. They can either be energizing or destructive for siting buildings, depending on their pattern. An energizing vein has a thick branches that connect to a larger trunk in a very organized pattern. Now, here are some classic meanings of dragon veins. The ones you see here with the red spots are the auspicious areas to locate a building in these auspicious patterns. Some of these other dragon vein patterns are not good areas for living in. They're either receding or their energy is somehow inauspicious, incomplete, or dead. So that's one way of interpreting our mountains. Now, we also have mountain dragon forms. And this is, of course, based on the perception that the body and the limbs of mountains are real life dragons in a world of view where nature is alive and landforms are considered guardians of the place. So, for example, we want to find locations protected by the body and the limbs of the dragon that are auspicious. And you know how many people just love hilltop locations, while that's not auspicious at all. Hilltop locations are sitting on the back of the dragon. They have no protection and they have excessive out of balance energy. Also, if you're situated on the dragon's tail, it can be a very unstable energy. We don't like to dramatically cut into the surface of the landscape because that speaks of injuring the lifeblood of the dragon or mountain form. It can be very inauspicious. So another way we look at celestial animals as protective creatures. So here we find that in Chinese astrology, the star constellations are the impetus for the green dragon presiding over the east, the red bird or the phoenix over the south, and the white tiger over the west, and the black tortoise over the north. So this is a pattern language that shows us the most ideal location for siting buildings. So here, if we were in a mountainous area, we want to see the high mountains in the back as a protective and stillness area of energy for protection. And we like to open to a low mountain or expanse of land in the front where we can collect a lot of sunlight, hopefully water. So this represents our ideal building location. Now the principles are that the solid tortoise at the back of the house should form that protective barrier. And these could be also taller buildings if you're in an urban area. The second principle is to provide that open space in front. The house shouldn't be too close to another building or its views being blocked by another building. And we want to create an area in front to collect the energy. Often water is very auspicious for this. It's in the east is the green dragon domain, and that's the place of the rising sun. And thus that's a more yang location. And on the west, we like a lower mountain landform. That's considered the most yin of all feng shui animals. And you'll see as we go to the next slide what these represent in terms of the ideal spatial functional layout. So if we're designing a building from scratch, A, we have located it in any mountain forms, as we just discussed. Now, B, we would lay out the spaces according to these guidelines as well. So we want to look for this armchair. The north is a perfect place because that provides the most yin energy and protection. In the north, we want to see mountains, trees, fences, higher walls, and fewer windows. And these are areas to locate bedrooms, which can be quieter and cooler yin areas, and places to locate bathrooms, laundry, and storage. Again, quieter areas that don't need yang energy. And of course, in the south and the east is where we want to locate. That's where all the yang and the fresh qi comes in. The east morning sun and the high sun of the noon. That's where we want to have our entries open to living areas, areas for balconies. The kitchen would most likely be located in this area as well. Because you see on the west, as the sun is waning, the yin energy starts coming in and this energy becomes more stagnant. So more stagnant areas could be located there. So I was lucky to borrow this ancient Chinese text, and unfortunately, it's all in Chinese, and I didn't get the name of it, but it really, really honed in on the concept that form feng shui is design with nature. And it had some beautiful examples of ancient Chinese hillside developments that I want to present to you. On the left, you're looking at how it's beautifully at the base of the mountain. It's tiered up the hillside, and there's a river running in front of it. So you'll notice that the village is embracing the river flow, and it opens up to the south, to the sunlight. It's protected by the mountain dragon energy that we've discussed. And the river overflows into an agricultural area to the fore. That brings more energy to the food, and it prevents, if it floods, from flooding the community. So it's just very, very simple concepts that are very easy to understand and very, very, very normal in site planning. But this is the original feng shui developments. So you see here how it fits into the mountainside like a glove. Again, sending the yang energy of the river into the crops and protecting the village from the overflow. Beautifully nestled in there. And other principles of the courtyard housing called hutong, the traditional Chinese courtyard housing patterns. Here you see it in this development stepped up the hillside, but it's beautifully laid out according to these feng shui principles so that there's plenty of opportunity for sunlight to get to all of the units and perfect airflow and natural sunlight for each development. These courtyard patterns are beautifully done. Sometimes there are several families living in a courtyard unit, at least in the urban ones that I've toured in Beijing. So let's do a little summary because there's many, many other site and building location precautions that we need to be mindful of. In terms of siting on a property, we don't want the building to be too close to the road or to the water or too far to the front or the rear of the site. If we site something on a dead-end street or cul-de-sac, we're eliminating the energy from reaching that, and it gets very dead by the time it gets to the end of the cul-de-sac. And also, we don't like to locate buildings next to cemeteries or churches simply because they're very yin environments. And we don't want to be overpowered by mountains or a high-rise building. And the driveway orientation is also very important. There's an analogy with money about how it's coming and approaching the building. And of course, buildings at T or Y sections are problematic, as are odd-shaped lots and pools in the wrong areas. We really need to work with a feng shui consultant to locate appropriate areas for water because it can drain the energy from the buildings or it can be absolutely a wonderful addition. Now, in relation to the street, if you have houses on the street, you want to have some kind of a curb or threshold. And buildings that are located below street level or below the road are dangerous. It misses out on a lot of the energy from the road. The roads can be considered a river. And it can be an area that's prone to flooding. Houses at the very bottom of the hill can experience life as an uphill struggle, and houses too high up on a driveway miss opportunities. And one-way street opportunities where the chi runs too fast from one direction are not the best. So now let's introduce 5-element theory. So classical feng shui is analogous to Chinese medicine, and particularly the acupuncture professional. The feng shui analysis of flow and the balancing techniques we use are the same in both systems. We utilize the Chinese medicine 5-element theory. So it's not necessary in feng shui to have cures that are made of trinkets and talismans. And it's not necessary to look like a Chinese restaurant. As an architect and designer and feng shui practitioner, I use the elemental normal design materials, the elements, the materials, the shapes, the colors, etc. So the elements of nature are the key to understanding. They're the archetypal building blocks between habitation and nature. They express the essential symbolic nature of color, matter, and energy. The sky, the earth, the oceans and rivers, our forests, the ore within the rocks, the fire, they're all alive with energy and teem with the colors that only nature makes pure. So this is part of our palette. And here is the language, again, from the Chinese medicine 5-element theory that we use for diagnosis and corrections in flying star feng shui. The fire, triangular shaped, is very focused, dispersing energy. It refers to the red, to the heart, the eyes, summer, noon, candles, light, and fire. While earth is yellow, earth tones, late summer, afternoon, stomach, spleen, digestive system, and the energy is falling. Metal is the most concentrated energy, and it's also white, silver, represents the autumn evening, the mouth, the chest, the teeth. And water, of course, is represented by blue, black, night, cold, winter, represents the kidneys, bladder, and ears. And the wood energy is very, very upward and very, very, very high chi energy. It represents green wood, alive plants. It doesn't represent dead wood, but growing plants and trees. It represents the chi of the morning, the liver, the gallbladder, and the hands. So this expands on our language of cures. And to promote the most positive chi energy, we follow the natural flow of the 5 elements. Most all buildings will have problems, some problems with disharmony, miscommunication, or unfavorable areas or stuck energy. So we use these principles to diagnose and correct the imbalances. And we follow the positive cycle. Fire produces ashes and becomes earth. Earth is the source of metal. Metal liquefies to water. Water nourishes wood, and wood feeds the fire. So that's the basic concept. Now, when we're making diagnosis and corrections for inauspicious areas, We have two analogies. In Western medicine, we often use a hammer, and we might use antibiotics to kill everything. While in Eastern medicine, we reduce the effects of the other energy. So in Feng Shui, we follow the Eastern medicine analogy, and we reduce the inauspicious effects of an element with its associated element. And when we analyze a site, we also look at the 5-element theory. The elemental shapes refer also to the mountains and rivers and roads on the bottom, and patterns in the rivers and water bodies. So these elemental shapes of our environmental features must be harmonized with the elements on the site, the building form, the flying star map, as well as the occupants' healthful elements. So we also want to look at the building shape. And I'll just quickly go through some of these lovely sketches to give you some ideas. Water is represented by organic, free-flowing, boundless building shapes, where metal is round, circular arches and domes, where very concentrated energy is created. Fire is represented by triangular shapes, A-frames, pointed shapes, like this A-frame and classical pediment. Earth refers to square, rectangular, boxy volumes. And then wood refers to rectangular vertical or very strong horizontal forms, like we find in the New York Times building by Renzo Piano, or Falling Water by Frank Lloyd Wright. And finally, we have color associations with the 5 elements. And this deals more with the health, the color temperature, and the psychology of the occupants and the spaces. As you see here, all the elemental colors refer to different feelings. Uplifting, earth is grounded, fire is energizing, water is refreshing and calming. This also refers to areas of the trigram. So that introduces our palette. Now let's briefly look at our own personal level of Feng Shui. It's very important that we understand each individual's personal Feng Shui profile so that we can marry that with the building and with the energies and with the land. So here are a couple tools that the Chinese have. One is called the Mingwa Chart, and it indicates the archetypal nature of the occupants. Each of us is born into a year, and this determines our Mingwa trigram. It's different for males and females in every year. We share this with others born that year, so it's a little more general in nature. But what Mingwa gives us are our best directions for sleeping, for health, for business, and for wealth, for relationships and family harmony, and for clear thinking and study. So it's important we always do a workup of this as well. And again, looking at the Bazi charts and the Feng Shui Mingwa charts, you can see we're each made up of a mix of elements. Each of us has our own elemental makeup of fire, wood, earth, metal, and water from our natal charts. And that also reveals our personal beneficial directions, our elemental composition from birth, if you will. And this is very useful in understanding our structure and how we balance it with our homes. And finally, a much more specific tool is called the 4 pillars natal chart, or Baze. And this 4-pillar natal chart is a snapshot in time of our energetic conditions at our moment of birth. So it describes the quality of qi, what was going on as we drew our first breath. So it's our Chinese astrology birth chart, if you will. And we evaluate this based on the Taoist calendar. And we can see a pattern of repetitive rising and falling cycles of qi, as well as galactic and cosmological influence. This reveals lucky and unlucky cycles of time, our human character. It also reveals our strengthening and weakening elements, color schemes, and describes our very most personal feng shui. So finally, on to the heavens, the compass school flying star feng shui. In classical feng shui, the energy patterns of a building are determined by the patterns of the solar magnetic fields that are encapsulated into the building when the roof encloses the space. That's the birth time of the energy of the building. Now, these energy wavelengths will take on a life of their own once contained in the building, and they create patterns over time that we can investigate. So again, the analogy to acupuncture, we analyze this flow and balance these problems using the traditional Chinese medicine 5-element theory. And while some energies are subtle, others can be felt very physical. So when we're looking at the heaven and the cosmological patterns, we're looking at the discipline of flying star. And that was popularized during the Qing dynasty by Grandmaster Shen Zuren. And it's an integration of the principles of yin and yang and how it interacts with the 5 elements, the 8 trigrams, the low shu numbers, and the 24 mountains by using time, space, and objects to create an astrological chart. And so we use this form to trace the patterns of energy, both annually and over the 20-year cycle time changes. So I'm going to just show you some basic concepts. The archetypal energies of the 5 elements are embodied in these compasses and in these calendars. So you can see the daily, monthly, and seasonal transformations of the solar energies between, fire, which is summer, high noon, and winter down below. And we have these seasonal variations of qi that occur between the seasons, and they're happening daily, monthly, and annually. So these energies were recorded by the ancient Taoists on sundials and in Baguas. So these figures here represent the 5-element theory, representing the 5 phases of energy paired with the 8 trigrams. You can see the sun rises to its fullest zenith at noon and at summer solstice, and it reaches its lowest point at night and at winter solstice. And the figure on the right shows the seasons overlaid with the 8 trigrams, which indicate these energy patterns. So what we use in flying star feng shui to do the analysis is called a Lopon Compass. And the history of these are very interesting. I've collected a lot of these in China. They started out as an early sundial, as you can see, and always with a magnetic compass arrangement. And here the energies were charted and arranged here on the right on a very more complex compass. So these Chinese magnetic compasses are referred to as Lopons. And the flying star utilizes a Lopon compass in order to acquire the directionality for the analysis. So the magnetic compass was developed to locate energies on flat, featureless land or urban sites. And here the flying star feng shui analyzes locations and directions to map out the energy flows, even when there are no mountains or water flows. So whereas a conventional compass on the top and right has markings for 4 or 8 directions, the Lopon typically contains markings for 24 directions. And this translates to 24 degrees of 15 degrees per direction, which translates into the sun taking approximately 15.2 days to traverse a solar term. And therefore, we get this series of 24 sections of the 360-degree days. Now, the flying star transformations are shown on these Lo-Shu square diagrams. You can see a number of them on the right here from different time frames. The numbers were originally revealed to the early Taoists, they say, on the backs of a small turtle, as you see on the right. And here is the original set of numbers. But the energy transformations shown in the magic Lo-Shu square is not unique to China. It's been found in ancient cosmologies as far back as the Babylonians. So many cultures have understood this zigzag of energy transformations in nature. So the zigzag line joining the numbers 1 to 9 on the square was considered to be a sign of Saturn. The Chinese interpretation of this energy transformation is that they changed from one year to the next, and they changed from one era of 20 years duration to the next. So in this case, we're calling these energies stars, and as they move, they're called flying stars. So this forms the basis of classical flying star school, which is one of the most complex techniques we have to analyze properties and spaces. So in the Lo-Shu square, you saw that we had 9 numbers and 9 stars. And each number in this Lo-Shu represents one of the Chinese trigrams. And it's related to an element, a family member, a color, an hour, a season, an organ, an ailment, and many others. Each of the stars is also considered to be either positive or negative if they're timely. So in each 20-year cycle, they have different meanings. The determining factor of each star depends on the specific activation of the star and the period of reference. Now, these placements were derived from astronomy and astrology, and combined together, there are 81 combinations of flying stars that render the meaning to our feng shui analysis. Here again, the 24 mountains are based on the Bagua, the 8 different trigrams that I showed you. And within each Bagua, there are 2 manifestations, both a yin and a yang, a masculine and a feminine manifestation. So when we do a flying star analysis, our building will sit in one of these 24 directions, and we use the Lopon Compass or even a regular compass to determine the facing direction and locate it within one of those 24 areas, each 15 degrees. So the second thing that comes into play here are the construction dates. It's very important to know when your building was built and when the roof went on, if you're having a feng shui consultation. And these energy cycles run through a 180-year cycle. There are 9 periods of 20 years each. We're currently at the end of a period 8 that runs from 2004 to 2023. And in 2024, we'll be entering a period 9. So all the feng shui will change, the energetics of our current buildings will change. And we're in a transition phase. So as we're siting buildings now, we're looking at auspicious locations for both of these cycles at this point. So this further denotes the accurate energy of the building. So we determine the cycle and the year of the building. And this determines the natal feng shui chart of the building in conjunction with the facing direction. So there you have the theory. Now on to the application. When we're taking a Lopon Compass reading, we stand at the front entry with the back towards the building, and we're looking at the facing direction. And that's the compass direction that we're going to be concerned with. And this, of course, is used in site planning. Whenever I site a building, a new building, we analyze this to capture the most auspicious energy pattern for the time cycle in which the building's built. So this plays a critical role in real estate and also matching the occupant's energy profile to the properties. And of course, existing homes and offices, we can work with that as well. And we can understand the energy cycles, and we can harmonize and enhance to increase health and wellness, prosperity and harmony. And so even current spaces can be helped. The next step is to draw your floor plan. And then we overlay these compass directions on the floor plan according to where the sitting, which is down here, and the facing is. Now the sitting is usually the back of the building, but sometimes entries can be in the back of the building. So it's very important to understand properly and to define the sitting and facing direction before you take the compass reading. Because it may be that the rear of the building is where all the chi is coming in. That may be where the mouth of chi is. So we overlay that. I find the figure on the left is much more accurate than using a grid on the top. And we overlay that, and then we write in the flying star numbers in the directions from our compass analysis. So that just gives you a brief overview of how this works. Now, generally, in evaluating the floor plan, we look at every quadrant and we look at the flying stars, what that means, what has to be enhanced versus what has to be minimized. But as we go through our room by room analysis in evaluating the floor plan, we look mostly at the entrance and the main door and the mouth of chi. This is where we invite in the best energy. Here we want to provide that open, spacious area outside the door to accumulate that positive energy. We call that a Mingtang. Balconies can also be the dominant mouths of chi or the introduction of the energy in some apartments. Some apartments, the main energy flow comes from the balcony area and exterior windows. So we treat that as a secondary entrance. And then in the kitchen, which represents nourishment and abundance for the family, that's a very important area to look at. We don't like to see that from the front door. We like to separate the stove, which is fire, from the sink, which is water, as those elements clash. Often we use reflective objects behind the stove to increase prosperity. And of course, bedrooms where we spend a lot of time are very important. They are the most yin spaces, hopefully located in the back of the home in the yin areas. And the bed should be positioned in the command position so that as you come through the door, you can see the front of the bed. It should be against a solid wall. And we locate the head of the bed in the occupant's auspicious squaw direction. So we start to marry up all of the information that we've analyzed from the person's feng shui, the form, and the flying star. Now, many of us have home offices or even office buildings. I've done. It's important to have a balance of peace and mental stimulation in an office. We want to choose the best room orientation per the flying star to locate the office. And the desk placement is very important. We want to choose an individual gua number for the occupant of that desk to make that the most auspicious place. We want to have a strong support or a mountain wall behind and a commanding view of the door with good side lighting and a decluttered space. So now to introduce some case studies, I'll show you different ways in which feng shui can be utilized. In this first case study, this is a site plan of a Massachusetts residence. Unfortunately, the flying star revealed that the energy of this house was locked for 20 years. And so they wanted to do a landscape plan anyway. So I devised a landscape plan utilizing the advanced concepts of water placement for landscape in order to enhance and unlock the energies of the house. So their flying stars, although were not good, we were able to make amends in the landscape plan, and it turned things around for this family. And they stayed there several years before they moved to a new location because of business. I was with them for many, many, many years in each of their homes. Here's a master plan. This is one of my designs for an entertainment center for the arts at Disneyland when I worked at Disney. And this concept evolved in a parking lot. So we know there's dead chi in a parking lot. There's really nothing there. So in order to create the excitement and the chi and the mountain forms, you can see how I used some of the backs of the buildings as mountains, and I arranged the buildings because it was a backstage tour of production of cinema, arts, film, music, etc. I arranged that in the back of the property, in the backs of buildings, and I created a promenade with water elements that brought to life this beautiful, beautiful avenue, this sinuous avenue, basically creating a river with arts and water features and circulation flow, where you came off this avenue and you attended the various restaurants and clubs along the street there. Again, in another plan when I was working with Sony, we did a project in San Francisco, Sony Metreon, and we were the tenants, long-term tenants, and provided attractions in an architect's building where there are a lot of very poor leftover spaces. So this denotes sort of a place where all kinds of circulation, escalators, elevators, and attractions dump out onto this nothing of a space. And of course, developers don't like to have wasted space, nor do designers. We want to make something exciting out of this. So I used form school techniques to create a circulation plan to capture and contain the energy, to slow it down. And in these pockets or eddies of energy, we created a pop-up store for Microsoft. And here are some of the mood boards from some of those pop-up kiosks. Creativity, progress, travel, various pop-ups occurred in this wasted hallway. And we were able to get a very, very rich experience and retail space out of this leftover space. So here again, this is an old warehouse project in starting out. Sony Development purchased an old warehouse, and I was the director of architecture for Sony Development in Burbank here. So the first thing I did was do a feng shui plan and locate myself in the very harmonious and optimum place for harmonious chi, where you can see where this heart pattern is. And I created a streetscape within the building. There were no windows. So I did a series of skylights along the streetscape, and we had public areas and then offices all around. So here, closer to home, the original Emerson Spa, I was the feng shui and the designer on that. And here we took a new barn, but an existing building to make a spa. And unfortunately, the placement of the building was problematic, and et cetera. So in order to bring wealth to this building and to design the spa in an auspicious way, I had to make some major changes with the feng shui. So here we had a flying star alignment that was out of alignment, not very auspicious. So that's why I located the water elements where they are. And I located water elements all at the rear of the building, because that's what was needed to shift the energy and to reverse the energy of this reversed flying star pattern. And I also chose the best chi, the 8-6, to design the entrance to the building and the lobby. And so for each of the flying stars, that indicated what functions would go there and what their design elements would be. So here you see the entry, the reflective Zen garden, symbolizing water, visible from the tea lounge, and creating a meandering entry path leading to what we call the Emperor's Gate, which is the mouth of the best chi energy. And here the approach to the door is everything. Created a large porch to usher in that good quality chi and to contain it, and selected, of course, the best quadrant for that. Here you can see in the pool area, there's a moon window that connects all the spaces from the lobby in through the yoga room into the pool area, and again connects to the outdoors. And then on the right, you see the lobby sketches, and this features water, a bamboo 3-tiered water fountain, and activating that specific 8-6 star energy, and forming a very, very auspicious place for the retail elements of the spa. Based on the flying star numbers, the lounge and the massage rooms were located in the various most auspicious areas, and the design was based on their enhancing elements and colors. So of course, as I said, Feng Shui is also very, very helpful in existing buildings. And this was a very difficult project. My client experienced an explosion in their Tribeca loft in their townhouse. Someone threw a bottle rocket out of a high rise and landed on their roof. A very unfortunate experience. And this is where the children were sleeping. The children's bedrooms were in the attic here. So I was called in to totally redesign after the explosion. And what I found, as you see here, all of these fire elements. And if you go back and see the date and the time of this explosion, you can see that this was bound to happen. So the first thing we did is I moved the children's rooms to the lower level. And then we did a major renovation of the attic level and moved the owner of the house, the mother, into the attic where she could have an open loft, master bedroom, and studio. So the idea was to create a spacious retreat for her. And so the first thing that needed to be done is to demolish all the blocked energy in the middle of the attic and to alter the fire energy of the ceiling. So here we're using form, water shapes, and elements to reduce the fire energy of the attic space and create a flowing retreat, thereby reducing the fire energy and balancing the space. There's another interesting project. I was not the designer, but I was called in by the Turning Stone Casino in Rome, New York. They specifically wanted to look at an underutilized space. And they wanted to create a more welcoming high-end gambling suite for their high-end big money Asian visitors. And the space, as you can see here, was very outdated, very compartmentalized, and harbored a lot of stuck energy. And when I did the flying star charts, a lot of inauspicious energy combinations. So first, in looking at a larger project like this, it's important to analyze the building, first of all, the overall building plan. And here you can see the flying star chart overlaid on the casino building to determine the chi of the area that we were working on, the area in question. And then on the right, you can see a chart that I made with all the flying star numbers, their meanings, and along with the appropriate cures for balancing the energy. And this gives the eventual designer a roadmap for how to design the space. Secondly, we went into the actual space, the VIP gaming lobby, dining bar area, and analyzed that. And very similarly, found that the only entrance of Qi, because all the windows were blocked off, was an elevator. You can see that elevator entrance where I have the red diagram, the red triangle. And then you enter this tiny little lobby and the energy was absolutely blocked. So part of my recommendations called for opening up all the walls and creating a large lobby area with a beautiful Mingtang area and views into the gaming area. This was an old private dining room that was to be blown out. Again, the corrections provide a design map according to the energies. And then finally, the gaming pit plan. It's reached by a tiny little constricted hallway. So that all had to be blown out. And then an energy map of the space itself. So how to redesign. There was a pinched entrance through a long, gloomy hallway. And once in the gaming space, the location of the pit boss and all the money was in a very inauspicious area. So I made recommendations to balance that and locate those functions, and to correct the space with normal design elements, shapes, and colors. So that gives you kind of a high level picture of how this works. Now, the last one I want to show you is a very large developer project, the Hovnanian Corporation, Riverwalk, New Jersey. This is a large housing block in New Jersey along the Hudson River. And in fact, I was a subcontractor to the architects in Dallas. The James Hartwork and Partners architects hired me for this job. And since I'm located in New York, I was able to go to the site. I was able to do a site analysis and point out the necessary site remediations, chart those on a map before they finalized their site plans and landscape plans, and make a lot of recommendations for improvements. Some of the units were located in very disastrous crux of public walkways. We had to block energies from neighboring projects. Green spaces had to be located and water elements according to both form school and flying star feng shui. And here again, we look at the site recommendations on a larger scale and when the various buildings were to be constructed. I focused in on building F, which is the first to be built, and analyzed building F with the flying stars to find out where the entries should be placed, where the water elements should be, where shapes, and we had to move around some units that were inappropriately placed. And then I made building recommendations based on all of that. And finally, each unit plan had its own feng shui flying star and form recommendations, where they could easily change that before they finalized the unit plans to make this more harmonious, specifically for their clientele. Now, lastly, in the last few minutes, I just want to introduce you to some exciting new influences that are coming in 2022. And here we look at the hexagram for 2022. It's hexagram 63, Chi, and it's called After Completion. You see the upper trigram is water and the lower trigram is fire. After completion, success in small matters. Perseverance furthers. At the beginning, good fortune. At the end, disorder. Now the image poem, water over fire. The image of the condition is after completion. Thus, the superior man takes thought of misfortune and arms himself against it in advance. So this comes from the classic Taoist Book of Changes, the I Ching, and it gives us a hint of the new energy we can expect this year in 2022. And bottom line, the advice for this year is the wise person will maintain the right attitude with perseverance and use caution. So many of you, of course, are here all about the new year and the year of the water tiger. Well, this is a Yang water tiger year, and it will likely bring positive changes into the world and bring some progress and a lot of innovation with new technologies and new growth, while we will continue to have extremes in weather patterns and uncertainties in finance will likely persist. The tiger years are also well known for their turbulence. So fasten your seatbelts and consider your feng shui analysis and adjustments for the new year. But like every other year, 2022 will certainly bring its challenges, although by enhancing the auspicious flying stars and weakening the inauspicious stars, we can improve our luck in all areas and make the most of what 2022 will bring. I want to leave time for questions, so I'm going to go through this last bit fast, and you can always refer back to it specifically to the recording. But every year we have new stars flying in. In 2022, we have all the annual flying stars flying into their original palaces on the Loshu Magic Square, which is very interesting because that will create double strength in each of the palaces. So there'll be more enhanced luck in the auspicious sectors and enhanced misfortune in the inauspicious sectors. So with the annual and original stars lining up this year, we'll have a much easier time to enhance the good areas and weaken the bad areas and make these adjustments, which we're doing now. As soon as the Chinese New Year comes, this is the time. So a few things to point out: the very best spaces for this year. And of course, this all has to be determined along with your original feng shui analysis based on when the building was built. But these additional energies fly in. The southeast, the south, and the northwest are the best areas this year. So these are the ones that we will make enhancements to. The two most difficult areas for this year are the southwest and the center. And so in these areas, you want to make sure that you're not doing any renovation. You want to avoid spending time in these sectors if possible. Don't perform renovations, don't disturb, keep the areas very quiet and calm. And here we can use metal objects, sculptures, clocks, trays, metal wind chimes to reduce the earth element. If your entry is in the southwest, you might activate a different door this year, or if your desk is there, definitely move your desk and computer. And if you must sleep there, which is my case, you don't move your bedroom. Don't worry about it. You can still use these metal elements, a white color scheme, metal objects, and be more mindful of your health this year. Other areas that are normally very, very good have some problems this year: the north and the northeast. So keep these areas quiet and calm. In the north, you can use metal and water elements, not real water. And in the northeast, you can use earth and fire elements. And if you do have an indoor water feature, the northeast is the place for that this year. Other corrections can be made in the east and west, normal corrections. And so I want to close now by just summarizing why we do feng shui. And generally, we do it to discover the potential of a site and discover how to best locate buildings. We use feng shui to diagnose and correct existing buildings. We use feng shui to enhance existing properties and energies and the new buildings. And we can also use it as a forecasting tool. Feng shui is time-based and measured on a 20-year cycle, a yearly, monthly, and even daily cycles. So we can use this calendric system to estimate and predict future events and plan for changes. So in summary, location, location, location. We want to be in the right place. We want to face the right directions. We want to be doing the right activities at the right times, and we want to be in tune with nature. And that summarizes feng shui. So thank you, and I'd like you to take a few minutes to formulate your questions in the chat box, and then we'll take questions. And if you have other questions, feel free to email me. There's my email on the bottom, and we'll take as many as we can. So back to you, Cornelia.
Okay, so we're taking 3 minutes, are we, Janice, so if you have
Yeah,
questions,
a few minutes. It might take only a minute or two for people to.
yeah, so write them in the chat box and then we will take your questions when we start again. So I've also put the Holistic Health Community's website on the chat for anyone who wants to make a note of it. If you join our mailing list, we'll let you know about our holistic healthcare days, about other programs such as the one this evening. Yeah. All right, maybe we should start, Janice, since we only
Sure.
have 2 minutes left. There's a
Yeah.
question from Christine. She asks, if you're sleeping in the Southwest, what would be some examples of a cure for that?
Right. I kind of glossed over that. I can go back to that slide and we can let you look at that slide a little more. There we go. So here we want to use metal. So using round objects like a round metal mirror above your bed is a wonderful way to do this, using a white coverlet on your bed, placing metal objects around, and generally, you can use rugs and throws and decorative items that are silver or white or metal and round objects, and use those in the bedroom. So that's those are some ideas. Definitely avoid earth colors because that will make things worse in the Southwest bedroom this year. So if you have any earth colors, cover them up. Any browns, terracottas, yellows, beiges, cover them up with a bedspread or throw, and really bring in some fresh metal energy. And don't worry about it.
Thank you. A question from Kathy. She asked, are there any books for novices that you could recommend?
Well, Kathy, there are a lot of books, some relating to landform feng shui and others relating to classical flying star feng shui. I think for a book list, why don't you email me and I can point you in some directions. It's a very meaty subject. It's not something that novices can easily navigate on their own. I know I studied for several years. I actually started with Larry Sang and took notes, and we created his books and his school. We had an interpreter. We found an interpreter in Los Angeles because Larry spoke only Chinese, and so I would take down the English notes, and eventually he got his books done. So that's Larry Sang, American School of Feng Shui. That's one recommendation for Flying Star. There is also video type classes or schools that you can attend. Typically, you would attend a school of Feng Shui to get this kind of information. I worked with Roger Green's School of Feng Shui in New York for many years. He now has that online, I believe. So that's a way that you could learn more. It kind of depends on the level of investment you want to make, but typically the best way is to get a few hours of a Feng Shui practitioner. And but there are a lot of books. There are a lot of books to avoid. Unfortunately, a lot of coffee table books were made, and it sort of distilled a lot of the information. But I hope that answered your question.
Yes, that's a good segue to the next question, which is the last question.
Okay.
That is, Michelle says, in the coming year, I'm hoping to have a small modular home built. What do you charge for a consultation?
Well, that we should discuss on email. So email me and we'll set up a phone call and we'll discuss that. It depends on a lot of things, how big the project is, where it's located, if you have floor plans, if you have a site plan, all of those things come into play. So I'd be happy to talk to you about that, Michelle, and it's very important. I highly recommend it. As long as you're investing in locating a property, you want to do it right. So it can be done in two simple visits. So depending on where you are and how large a project and what materials you have to work with. So, but I think it's quite affordable.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Janice, for all that you've given us this evening. We deeply appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. I also put my email in the chat. Did you see that? Is that up there?
Yes, let's see.
Anyway, it's Janice at janiceweltondesignworks.com.
I don't see it in the chat. And I put the
Send.
health community email, but I misspelled it. I misspelled community. It's holistichealthcommunity.org. So please do
Okay.
this. So
I
thank
just
you all
sent
for
it.
coming. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all soon. Thanks, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Sharon.